Hey everyone, Flo from Off to Lens here, and today's video is about the C5 matte box from NISI. I will talk about how this matte box is different than others, how I use it, and what I like and don't like about it. There's also a discount code for you, so be sure to watch the video and check out the link in the description. Before I start, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and let's get into it. So I have been using NISI's filters for many years now, from the cinema ones to the latest Swift system, and I really enjoy them. Normally when it comes to gear collabs on YouTube, I usually get reached out, but this time I saw the matte box after it was actually launched, and I reached out to NISI because I knew that this would be an important part of my kit for a few reasons. And as always, these are my honest opinions and they do not get to modify the content of this video. As I shoot a lot of documentary work and these are an essential part of my kit, and since I also use cinema lenses, matte boxes are kind of a necessity for me. If you want to know more about NISI's Swift system or VNDs in general, feel free to watch my dedicated videos. So before I dive into the kit, let's talk about the matte box itself. So this one is made of a mix of aluminum, composite plastic, and carbon fiber. It is also a clamp-on system, which means you don't need to use rails. So in terms of diameter, this matte box is compatible with 95mm cinema lenses and lenses with filter threads up to 82mm. And you get adapters for 67, 72, 77 and 82mm. This matte box supports 4x4 filters, as well as cinema 4x565 filters, and you also have the new rotating filter. And on top of the matte box, you have an adjustable carbon fiber flag. And you also get a very high quality carrying pouch. So I have the Filmmaker Kit, which obviously includes the matte box as well as the trays, but on top of that you also get a 4-stop IND filter, a rotating C5 VND, as well as a black mist 1.8. And both the IND and the black mist are in 4x565. Aside from the Filmmaker Kit, you can also get the Cinema Kit, which includes on top of that a rotating PL. If you have been following the channel for a while now, you know that I also own the Tilta Mini Matte Box as well as the small rig lightweight, so you might be wondering why I wanted this one as well. One of the reasons that I needed this matte box is that I recently started shooting with the DZO Film picture zooms, and these cinema lenses are 95mm front thread. Which means that I can't use my Tilta Mini because it only goes to 82mm, and if I want to use my small rig matte box, then I need to have an adapter, like a step down ring, because the small rig matte box is 114mm, so you need an adapter for 114 to 95, which I do have, by the way. So what I like about this NISI is that it fits directly on the DZO lenses with the clamp-on system. I don't need any adapter or any step down rings. Secondly, this C5 matte box is very versatile, a lot more than traditional matte boxes. So not only you can use 4x4 filters or 4x565 filters, you can also use their new VND rotating one made for this matte box in particular, and that is very useful and handy for a few reasons, and I'll explain this in a video later. The NISI also sits in between the two matte boxes that I have in terms of size, and if I want to use two filters, the only one I can do that out of the two is a small rig, and the NISI is much smaller, which is a lot easier for me to carry around, especially when you shoot outdoors. I will probably make a comparison video between the three if you are interested, so stay tuned. And just for a bit of context, my first matte box was actually, I think, one from Tilta, and it cost $1,000, and at the time that was the only one that I could afford that could use two filters. So things have come a long way since then. And the last reason that I was interested in this matte box is that I know of NISI's products. I've been using them for years and I know the quality, so I could only imagine the quality they would have put into a product like that. And as always, all the gear featured and mentioned in this video will be listed below. Depending on your type of work, you might not need a matte box every day, but you most likely will need one at some point. They are a pretty important piece in a kit, especially if you shoot a lot of content outdoors or if you use cinema lenses. They also allow you to use high quality filters. And matte boxes can also be used for something other than just using filters, and they are also a way to control light and the amount of flares or glare, for example. Here a quick example where you can see the effect of using the flag. And they do protect the lenses as well to some degree. And finally, they help in making your kit look more legit. And this sounds a bit funny, but it is true, and perception is very important. One of the big differences with this matte box is the way that it is made to accommodate for the rotating VND. The ability to use both the VND and individual cinema filters is pretty cool. This means that for people starting out, you get the best of both worlds. So you can get the matte box and start experimenting with cinema filters, but you also retain the ability and the flexibility to use a VND. And if you already own a VND or regular circular filters, then a matte box is a step up in a way that it allows you to use cinema filters. In my case, I own two cameras, as you know, the regular BMPCC6K and the 6K Pro. One has internal NDs and one does not. I've talked about this many times, that whilst I do love the internal NDs, they're very practical, very handy. For proper projects, so when I do have the time, I prefer to use my R&D cinema filters from NISI because there's definitely a step up in quality. And sometimes I actually use the 6K Pro as well with the matte box or with my cinema filters, because the only thing that I want to use out of the camera, apart from the image and everything that goes on, is the tiltable screen, which the regular 6K doesn't have, but I will not use the internal NDs. This happens a lot when I want to use cinema lenses and I want the best image quality possible. What makes this C5 matte box also very special is you essentially get the ability to go from 1 to 9 stops of ND. Not having to increase your aperture or change your settings in super bright conditions is always a plus. It allows you to be more creative and in control of your image. And sometimes having only 4 stops or a VND of 1 to 5 is not enough, and having the ability to combine the two is great. Since I got a matte box, I also use my initial cinema filters. So for example, if I didn't want to use the 4 stops that comes into the Filmmaker Kit, I could also use my 0.9 filter. So essentially I would use the 0.9 at the front and still have the VND at the back. And I did that a lot when I was filming with the DZO lenses, because 4 stops in a VND was a bit too much, but I knew that I still wanted to have an IND at the front. Not having to remove all filters or to swap all filters when you need to change the density while using a matte box is great. For my type of work, which is mostly documentary, travel, licensing content in outdoor conditions, this is very, very useful. Speaking of outdoor work, the matte box also features deflector slots on the sides, so they're there to help with wind resistance and ensure stability when you're shooting at high speed, for example, if you've got your matte box on a gimbal or something like that. Now let's talk briefly about the filters. So first of all is a 1 to 5 VND. So this is a true color VND for accurate color rendition with no X effect, and it is variable from 1 to 5 stops. So this one is particularly made for the C5 matte box, and it goes into the same slot where you can put your 4x4 filters as well. So on top of the VND, there's also a rotating wheel which allows you to adjust the amount of density, and you do it manually, or you can actually use a small motor, which is very, very handy. And because you just use it with your finger, it's very, very easy and quick. You also don't have to touch the lens with like a traditional VND, for example, when you have to physically rotate it, and you can actually move your whole kit, if that makes sense. Essentially, this allows you to have more control in a smoother way. The 4-stop IND. This is an IND filter, so it has an IR coating to eliminate unwanted image coloration, especially when you use them with other filters. So this removes any color cast and keeps the black as true and rich as possible. As I've said before, the 6K and the 6K Pro are my main cameras, and they are known to have IR pollution because they do not have an IR filter. And even if the 6K Pro has internal NDs, they are not INDs. And this is why I got my NISI IND filters years ago in the first place, just to avoid that IR pollution. In my previous VND videos, I was showing the effect of using the VND at full strength on a 6K Pro, and you could clearly see the IR pollution. This time I did a very quick test, and you see a slight reddish color on the backpack when using the VND at 5 stops. This is very mild, and when you use the IND, it is completely gone. I often use this backpack as a reference because I know that it shows IR pollution very well. So my take is that if you are filming a lot of content that has black in it or in super bright condition, it's always better to prioritize the IND instead of the VND. And as a tip, with a VND, I think it's kind of like with any VNDs in general, I always try to stay between 1 and 3 if I've got a 1 to 5 VND, because the higher you go, the more likely you will encounter IR pollution. Again, this is more of a camera issue than a filter issue. It will just be accentuated if you use a VND VND at full stops. For example, in this footage of my friend Thomas, I've shot this with the D0 lenses with both the IND and the VND, and he's wearing pretty much all black, so I think if I wasn't using an IND filter, you could definitely see the eye pollution. And by the way, make sure to check out his work. He's a very talented filmmaker, and he helped me shooting quite a few BTS shots and as well be the subject of this test. Next we have the Black Mist 1.8. Black Mist filters are used for different reasons. They are used in a more creative style. So for example, you can soften the image, you can make your highlights glow. It also, with some cameras and lenses, can take the digital edge of the image, and most of the time it is used to create an atmosphere. A lot of people use them to have a more cinematic look. I hate using that word, but it's usually meant for that reason. Here's an example of when I was using a 1.4 part of the Swift system, so you can see the difference with using a filter and not using it. So it definitely has a look which I love, but it's not for every single shot in my opinion, but it is very handy to have as part of a kit. I have both 1.4 and 1.8, and I always get asked all the time. To me, 1.8 is more subtle. It's more to have, like I said, a softer image and a slight glow. 1.4 is more of a look. It's more of an actual atmosphere that you created and something that is a bit more obvious. So now let's talk about the things that I like about this matte box. First of all, I love the box that it came in and the carrying pouch. I think it's very important to have products that are well presented. Then what I like about this matte box is that it is very compact and lightweight. It weighs only 350 grams. I really like the size as well because it is big enough to feel sturdy, but small enough to use with one hand or to carry around. The C5 is also very well built and it feels great and is also very easy to use. Next is the tray system, and I really like this system because it means that you have to touch the filters less and it makes it easy to swap them too. Changing filters on a matte box is always kind of like stressful and not a nice experience, so this really helps, and they also feel very secure. This tray also accepts 2mm and 4mm filters, which is great for someone like me, for example, because I own both. The filters also sit deep inside the matte box, and this is more secure and it also prevents unwanted glare. And also having the filters as close to the lens as possible, avoid vignetting, and I think you can use lenses down to 15mm full frame equivalent. And another huge point for me is the flexibility again of this matte box. So from the ability to use two different filters to being able to use a VND within a matte box itself, this means that you're able to be more precise, and you can also save time since you don't always have to remove filters to make a change in density. And the adapters that they give you as well means that you can pretty much use any lenses that you want, stills or cinema, as long as they're 95mm and under. For example, I use this matte box as well on my 70-200, which is a lens that I love, and I use that to get a few shots of the bright snow on top of the mountains in the Alps. And I like that they also offer different kits. So for example, you can get a matte box itself, you can get the Filmmaker Kit like I have, and you can get the Cinema Kit if you are in need of a PL. This means that you can either buy for what you have or what you need. And like I said before, another great thing for me personally is the ability to use the matte box directly on my D0 cinema lenses. And finally, I think this is a great and complete system that is very easy to carry around whether or not you use the pouch they provided, and that enables you to cover a wide variety of situations. Now let's talk about the things that I don't like as much, and the first thing is that the top flag doesn't feel as strong as the rest of the matte box in my opinion. And I don't mean that it's going to fall off or anything like that, it's just the way that it connects to the matte box itself. There's actually quite a bit of movement and I'm sure you can tighten it, but I'm not a big fan of how it actually can go away from the matte box if you just push a little. And it didn't bother me at all when I was shooting, it's just that I noticed it when I was actually touching it. Next is with the dial. So I love that rotating wheel that allows you to change the density, but for some reason I keep going the other way. So for me it would make more sense that if you go right, it would get darker, but for this one it's the opposite. Next, I would have loved to see some alignment on top of the matte box to make sure that it is straight. Obviously the matte box might not be resting flat on something, but it would be nice to just have a little mark to allow you to put it straight away on and you know that it's perfectly aligned with the rest of your kit. Another note as well is that there are no threaded mounting points on the matte box itself at the top like you could find on a Tilta, for example, or the small rig I think. They do, however, have a road attachment system on top of the VND, which is quite handy, but I thought I would mention it because I know that some people actually use accessories around their matte box. I don't personally do that, but I thought I would mention it. And lastly, when you look at the matte box from the back, it can get a bit confusing because you have quite a few knobs. So by the time you have the one to secure the matte box, the one to secure the tray, the VND, the road attachment, you have 4 knobs to look at, and you have the rotating wheel. None of these are deal breakers though. Yes, I would absolutely recommend this matte box. If you are looking into getting your first one, then the C5 is a pretty solid choice. You get a great quality product that is also versatile, and to me, quality and versatility is something that is extremely important. The ability to use different combinations of filters easily and quickly is very useful, especially as a solo filmmaker. It feels like you are using high quality and professional gear, because you are, but it also feels less daunting and easier to get used to it because of the whole system. Personally, I think that the Filmmaker Kit is of great value as it allows you to shoot a wide variety of content and allows you to use stills lenses or professional cinema lenses as well. After shooting with this for a few weeks, I found that leaving the 4-stop ND in the matte box and using just a small amount of the VND was my go-to setup. That's it for me for today, guys. I hope this was helpful to you. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. And like I said before, feel free to check out the link in the description to get a discount code as well. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Also, feel free to check out my ebook, Freelance Documentary Filmmaking, An Introduction, where you can find a streamlined but comprehensive overview from pre-production all the way to marketing, built on years of my own experience shooting short documentaries around the world. And if you are interested, I'm also doing filmmaking mentoring sessions where you can ask me anything about a wide variety of topics.